This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining into the LD COI. I'm Zachary Payne. I'm the programs chair for the COI, and I'm proud to have Colonel Retired Don Gleason on board for this presentation today. Don and I talked about a month ago before he had some not so fun surgery, but he was looking forward to it then, and we're looking forward to hear what you got to say now. Don has a lot of experience both in the Air Force and now as a private sector. Personally can attest to his leadership and contributions to LDP when I was both a student and now as a graduate. So without further ado, Don, over to you, and thank you again for representing the COI.
Oh, you're welcome, and I really appreciate the invite. Thanks for helping me overcome some challenges today. It's interesting that Eddie and I were talking, and all of a sudden when I changed some things around, all of a sudden I couldn't see anything, or you guys couldn't hear me. But we're working through it. So it's an honor to be talking to the Leader Development COI and talking about mentoring. I really appreciate the invite, and I appreciate how SAME is looking at leadership and just developing, through the foundation, the Leader Development Program. I was lucky enough to lead book reviews for each of the first two classes, and I'm hoping to do it again this year. That's exciting to help people really understand leadership. I lead the SAME Leadership Lab in San Antonio. This will be my third year, probably my final year, so that other people can have a chance. So it's exciting to help people to dive into some of the books. I've learned more, I think, about leadership since I left the Air Force and even left Booz Allen than I knew before. And it's probably because now I can take all that context and put it into several different memes and ways of thinking, and really studying, John Maxwell and Patrick Lencioni and Zig Ziglar and all these other great leadership authors and presenters, and really understanding. My passion is serving the military and serving the AEC community. So it's really exciting to be here. I'm probably not going to tell you something new today, but I am going to ask you to think about how you are executing that. I mean, mentoring is mentoring, but what I want you to think about is how you're approaching the mentoring relationship. And that's why I call it left of mentoring. I think about left of bang when I was at the Pentagon before I retired about 12 years ago. We were talking about how we do everything we can do to stop the bang, the IED, the explosion from happening. So I've been doing some series of talks at the Career Transition Workshop. I did one called Left of Resume. It's all the things you got to do before you write your resume. But most of us just jump in and write the resume and then send out applications. We don't think about all that other stuff. And I think the same thing happens a little bit in mentoring. We don't think about all the things we need to be doing before we get to that mentoring relationship. And that's really where I really want to spend my time as we talk this morning. Let's see. Here's a little bit about me. I was lucky enough to be in the Air Force. I was joined for 4 years. I stayed for 27. I got out in 9 years as a management consultant. But without reading them, here's some of the other things that I really enjoyed doing. It's not just about the job. It's about life. It's about spending time with the family. It's about spending time with the friends. It's about enjoying things. And I like the last one. I like to play with my grandkids. And oh yeah, even their parents. What did everybody say? If I knew how much fun grandkids would be, I would have had them before my kids. So it's a lot of fun. But here's a question. I want you to put it in the chat. And if you guys can speak up, let's do that as well. But I want this to be participatory today. And I want you to ask the question, what breaks your heart? Just earlier this spring, I was listening to a presentation, and the presenter asked me that question, what breaks your heart? So I want you to put that in the chat. Seeing people I love hurt. There you go. I like that, Kevin. Thank you. Who else? What is it that breaks your heart? While you're typing those in and thinking about it, what breaks my heart is seeing military in transition, or their spouses from, as they're transitioning out of the service, struggle in the process. I was talking to a program lead this week, and I'm watching my parents age. I agree, yeah. And now, I guess I'm 61, watching myself age as I go through these surgeries. What was I? So I talked to a program lead this week, and he said, suicides show up for the majority of military during transition. Majority of military, not all. certainly there's a lot of other causes, but it just shows how stressful transition is. And frankly, I've worked with a lot of people who are really struggling with transition, and it leads to depression. There's one story that I hear all the time. There's our program lead here in San Antonio, talks about how the wife had to walk into the office and pull him out because he was just getting so depressed on the process. And that was just it was hard for her to see it, and that's hard for me to see so many folks. So I've actually started a nonprofit last year helping military in transition using the mastermind concept. And if you're interested, we can talk that sometime, but that's not the point of the story today. And I don't say any of that to scare anybody who still has to go through transition, but you can't just write a resume, put out an application, and expect to get a job. And why am I talking about transition when I'm here talking about mentoring? Because it's kind of the same way. You can't just go pick a mentor and start having a conversation with the mentor. You've got to do preparation. You've got to do the thinking part of it. You've got to lead the effort as the mentee. Otherwise, it's not going to go right. So productive relationship is one with a lot of preparation and hard work. And that's not surprising to, I don't think, any of us. I've learned one thing, and that is you never stop learning. As I said earlier, as much as I learned in the Air Force about leadership, I have learned so much more. Just the way different leaders have put it in context. Every time I went to professional military education, I learned about, what's a manager, what's a leader. We're going to talk that in a little bit. But we talked about servant leadership, but we didn't really delve into like the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership from John Maxwell. Really putting and thinking into the different aspects of leadership. Or another book John has, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. We end up talking at each other all the time, but do we ever talk with people? Are we listening to understand, not just listening so we respond? And that's a huge difference. So thanks for all the different quotes and what you guys struggle with. I appreciate that. And Eddie, we got to capture that chat before we're all over. So a quick lesson. After coming off a project a couple years ago with Booz Allen, I've been traveling every week for 3 years. I had separated from SAME. I was still a member. I just wasn't going to meetings because I was always, away. I learned about leadership lab when I came back, and I asked the question, how could I be the director of the leadership lab? Because I'm a John Maxwell team member. You can see my sign in the back. That's what I do now, is I speak and train about leadership. And I was told I had to be a graduate of the program. I said, okay. So I started just talking about the program, learning about the program, and I let leadership know that, hey, I would love to do that job. Well, in January 2019, they reached out to me and said, would you like to do it? And I said, you bet. I was excited. So I asked for the position. So I learned really quick a lesson. If you want something, learn about it, talk about it, ask for it. Now, that's not something new, but I want you to put in the chat, how often do you really tell your leadership what you want? Or do you just expect them to put you in the right positions, teach you what you need to know? Put that in the chat. I'd be curious what everybody's perspective was. Annually, once a year, yeah, okay. Once a year, you let your boss know. My leadership's good about asking. Oh, that's great. I don't see that too often. I tell them what I want often. I wouldn't have my job today if I didn't. That's awesome. Just about every time I talk. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad you guys are doing that, because I saw 20 years ago, people weren't really asking the question, what did I want? I remember PCSing the first time. I was going to F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. And the position was advertised as the Chief of Construction Management. Now, my interest was never in construction. It was never in design. Not through college, not through my first assignment. I'm an environmental engineer. That's what I really loved. I was doing groundwater surveys and the initial part of the installation restoration program. I just loved it. But I thought, if I'm going to go beyond 4 years, I need to advance myself in other areas. So this we thought would be a great career broadening experience. And they were building brand new housing. So I was really excited about it. And as I was getting ready to leave, about 2 weeks beforehand, I found out that the commander was going to put me back into environmental. And I didn't know why. So I called him up and I said, hey, sir, I'd just love to talk to you about the assignment. I would love to get into that Chief of Construction Management job. I think that would really help me advance my career, and I think I could be a better officer. And I was trying to sell it from the perspective of what's good for the Air Force. And I remember the words he used, and they were very clear. He said, quote, Lieutenant, I'll put you where I damn well want you, unquote. And so went my first opportunity to tell the boss where I'd really like to go. But I never stopped asking for what I wanted to do. I just probably learned a little bit better how to ask the question, how to express my desire. So we're here to talk about mentoring, and that some ways typifies the relationship. Too often we don't get into a conversation with our boss. Like I was saying, I'm glad to see you guys are, but there's a lot of people who don't ask. They just take it as it comes. And I was put in a job. I was given clear roles of what I was supposed to do. I went out and did it. They were there to answer questions, but nobody was really developing me. And so we've already talked. I was going to ask you a question if you guys have seen a different experience, and it sounds like you guys have. So I'm really excited about that. Frankly, everything that I didn't have wasn't my fault. I did get to know one deputy base civil engineer in my third assignment. We had a really good relationship, and we talked about a lot of things going on in the squadron, and he helped develop me and helped me develop my thinking. It wasn't so much a formal relationship, but it was a mentoring relationship. I would come in with questions. He would see different things, and we'd sit and have a beer. He was a great beer drinker. We'd go down to Oktoberfest, and I still spend time going back to Pittsburgh and getting together with him because he's just that great of a friend, but also still a mentor. The only other real mentoring relationship I can remember is when a team of captains at my second base, remember I was going there to be the construction chief, several of us got together and said, let's see if we can develop ourselves. I don't see any other thing going on. Let's see if we can develop ourselves. So we brought in other officers, we brought in senior NCOs, and we just talked about different subjects. And we learned about different things from different perspectives. And I'm curious, did anybody else have a peer group that was focused in on professional development that you could use to help grow yourself? Like that one comment, asking was a hard thing for me to learn as a young woman, but I know how to do it now. Excellent. My dad taught me young, you don't get anything you are willing to ask for. All right. You guys are proactive, and I love it. Anybody else have a peer group of folks that you worked with? I haven't seen anything in the chat yet. Toastmasters is good. John Maxwell team runs speaking groups, and I'm about ready to jump into a Toastmasters as well. I see Joshua says not really. Matt says they exist, but I haven't used them. Yeah, so a lot of times we're not using our peer group to help us develop, but it's good that we are asking. So as you heard from my bio, I've moved from the typical engineering construction field into, after 27 years in the Air Force and 9 years with Booz Allen, I'm now focused in on two lanes. I run a for-profit doing leadership training and coaching, and I run a not-for-profit helping military in transition using the mastermind concept. I get to help them in their post-military career, not transition out of the military, but transition into their next employment and really walk through that. The focus was on personal development and leadership, and it was very intentional. I love that word, intentional. It was a result of me observing how my supervisors led organizations. They were a lot of times very separated from the people. They didn't really get to know the people. They were so busy working on the tasks and the suspenses and then working with the leadership that they didn't get out and meet the people. And I just thought about this slide. What's the difference between a manager and a leader? And this was a lot of times in our PME. A manager is one who focuses on the numbers, the tasks, the suspenses. They get things done, but they really don't know about the people. They don't know when somebody comes and says, hey, let me help you get to, I'd like to do in this job. They don't necessarily are focused in on helping that. But a leader is one who's there with them in the job and gets to know the people, gets to know their desires, gets to know their strengths and their weaknesses, help them develop, purposely, intentionally going forward. And I think it was my third base when I was talking about the deputy base civil engineer where squadron commander actually helped me get into certain jobs. And I didn't always like it, but he gave me different tasks and he sat down and talked to me and he helped me grow. And I was excited about that. As Chris Hogan says, Chris Hogan's a Dave Ramsey personality. I hope you know Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University, great small business in Nashville. He says, managers make people better at their job. Leaders make people better at life. I just love that quote. So put in the chat, who was the best leader you ever met. I'm just going to start it off. Major General Del Uhlberg. I got to work with him at the Pentagon before I retired. And he just was a big thinker. He wouldn't stick with the status quo if that wasn't the right answer. We were about ready to reduce the budget 5 to 10%. And he said, peanut butter spread budget cuts are a lack of leadership. We're going to figure out how to do this differently. And we did. And that's a whole other story. But we did. And we changed the way we did business, and we saved money that way. And I just loved the way he did it, and he just had fun, and he got to know the people. He's probably one of the best leaders I've ever met. I'm curious if you've thought of anybody. I'll probably have no idea of these names, but it's the process of you thinking into who are the best leaders that you've ever worked with. Like one is the important aspect of mentoring is to be able to determine what your mentee needs and then find a way to deliver it. Yep. I view it like marketing the peers forum. I love that. I don't have a dedicated peer group. I discuss career development with superiors quite often. Okay. Being a part of industry association has always been a great way to get around growth-minded peers. All right. I hope you guys are reading that chat. That's a good way for us to communicate. Now, Major General Anthony Funkhauser. Outstanding. Yeah, I got to work as an Army guy. I got to work as an Air Force guy. I got to work with Army Major General Peter Chiarelli, ended up being the 4-star Deputy Chief of Staff of the Army. He was the 1st Infantry Division Commander in Baghdad, working the Reconstruction. What an awesome opportunity to learn. So let's keep going here. So, improving leadership is one of my focus areas, as I said, for my business and personal pursuit, helping people have the life they want. It's also one of the biggest challenges I work with people to resolve. Almost every C-suite leader I talk to, and even the next level down, all struggle with time management, they call it, but it's really priority management. How do you put things into your day? How do I get the right things done? How do I try to balance or be in harmony in my life in the different areas? Because work can quickly take over. Life's too short to be solely focused on one area at the expense of the other. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. If you aren't familiar with this concept, one thing I preach in the Leadership Lab is having a life plan. And that's kind of what you see on the screen. Looking at the different areas of your life and thinking into what you want to achieve in each one of those. There's relationships, there's financial, there's physical, there's personal, there's spiritual. What does all that mean? Let me just touch on it a little bit. Professional. What work do you want to do? I was environmental. I didn't want to do design and construction. I was going to subvert myself, I guess, to the Air Force so I would do that job. But he saw my strengths in environmental, and frankly, that was a great decision because I ended up winning 2 major command level environmental awards during that period, and it really vaulted my career. So I wouldn't have got those opportunities if I would have gone into construction management. So maybe he knew something that I didn't know. What rank do you want to attain? What career position do you want to get to? I wanted to be the Chief of Readiness or the Chief of Environmental at the Pentagon before I retired. And that's what I was able to get to by letting people know what I wanted and driving toward that. What's your spiritual side? Your relationship with your Creator or your inner self, depending on where you're at on those decisions. What are they calling you to do, and how are you fulfilling that calling? Relationships. The connections you have with your spouses, your spouse, I said spouses, your spouse, your kids, hopefully Pearl, grandkids, friends, just other relatives. The one thing my kids and I like to do, and my wife, we have every year the Olympics comes up, we have a thing called the Gleason Olympics. And we meet in Kansas City where all the kids are right near that area. And we come up with our own games. We have competition, and we have medals, and we have a big dinner at the end of it. It's just a whole day of fun and activities, and we take pictures, and it's about creating moments with the family. We did that when we went skiing. We did that when we did trips in Germany and across Europe. Spent 7 years in Europe. So hopefully you're investing that time in creating it and not missing all those different activities, and you're being there with the family. Financial. What's the amount of money you want to have at retirement? I think too often people just peg a number out that way and just say $1 million. Is $1 million the right number? It's only right if it funds the things you want to do in your retirement. So thinking into what is it? What kind of cars do I want to have? What kind of house do I want to own? What kind of travel do I want to do? All those different things. Do I want a second house? If you haven't thought into those things and what it's going to cost and when you need to buy them, so potentially in terms of, so you're thinking about your income and what you need to earn, you're probably not going to get there. And I've seen too many people, what is it? 50% of Americans can't withstand a $500 unexpected bill because they're living paycheck to paycheck. That's really sad. And a lot of military are living in that situation. So we've got to really focus in on that side of it, as financial as well, so that we're developing. And even your physical. What's your physical goals? Your physical fitness, not just losing weight, but what is it you're losing weight for? I've said it a couple of times. It's for me to be able to play with my grandkids for another 20 years. They're 8, 6, 4, and 1. So another 20 years, I want to be out there playing Frisbee golf and playing Gleason Olympics and all these other things. I don't want to just sit on the porch and drink a beer and watch. I want to be a part of it. So I want to ask you guys, do you have a life plan? Have you thought about these different areas, and have you actually written them down? Do you think about them and move toward them? Or are they just thoughts in your head? Tell me in the chat. If you want to come off mute, you can do that too. But do you have a life plan? See if anybody responds. I'm hoping you do. I'm hoping this isn't new, but if it is, man, yep, that's what happens a lot. Just like Francis says, it's in my head. It's not written down. But never thought about it that way. Thanks, I'm glad. No, exactly, just vague dreams. Here was something that was really neat. As I started my small business last year on a nonprofit, we started thinking about where we wanted to grow. We wrote a business plan. And it was new for me. I had a for-profit business, but I hadn't developed a business plan in the first 2 years. So I went back and did it for that one. But my first year, we did it for the nonprofit. As soon as we said we wanted to have 9 cohorts of 10 people, boom, all of a sudden when I wrote it down on paper, it said, I got to be able to recruit 50 different people to be able to do this work. And then I got to recruit more than that because some of them are going to get jobs and leave the cohorts. I got to recruit 150 to keep 90. And at 9 cohorts, I can't lead them all. So I need to train another trainer to be able to conduct those cohorts. And oh, by the way, we need to have a whole financial arm to be able to fundraise, to be able to source put. Just by writing them down, all these different elements came into my mind and my awareness that I wasn't aware of until I literally wrote it down and started thinking about it. So I think that's the power of a business plan, the power of a life plan, is once you start writing it down and thinking about it, now you're going to start seeing all the different aspects, right? Because all you might say is, oh yeah, for my relationship with my wife or my husband, my spouse, I just go out to dinner once a month with them. Is that really the right answer? Does that really get you where you want to go? So like the challenge, I see a lot of them don't really have a life plan. So I wrote it down years ago, but life has changed. Yeah, we got to revisit that. So great thoughts. Thanks for participating in the chat. I appreciate it. If we can't be open and we can't be vulnerable, we can't move forward. So what is mentoring? Mentoring is a learning and development partnership driven by the mentee to improve an area of personal or professional life. It's that simple. I bet, as we were just talking, I bet a lot of you thought about mentoring only as professional side. There's no reason you can't find somebody who's done really well in finance and have them help you develop a business plan or a life plan or a savings plan. How do you calculate these things out? I was talking to my accountant about how do I start pulling different things out of traditional IRAs versus Roth IRAs versus non-IRAs, and how do I work that? And I ended up one night just thinking into it, and I created a spreadsheet and worked all the taxes and what dollar amounts I can have, and I created it. So it took me about 2 hours, but it just took me time to think about it once I thought about it. And I'm not normally that kind of a geek on spreadsheets, but I did sit down with her and talk to her after that about what do I need to do as I go forward. So it's not really a mentoring relationship, more an advising relationship, and we'll touch that in a second. But as I stated, our SAME San Antonio Post actually has a mentoring guide. And if you want to copy that, I can get you a copy. But it talks about that relationship. I want to focus in on 3 parts of that definition. The second line, it's a partnership. It's not just 2 people coming together. It's 2 people agreeing to have a relationship focused in on whatever that goal area is, with clear endpoints, with clear ways of how this is going to work, how often we're going to meet, how long we're going to meet. I mean, 1 hour every 2 weeks, 1 hour a month. We're going to do it for 6 months. What's the goal we're going to attain? How are we going to do homework? Is there going to be homework for the mentee to bring in? Is there going to be homework for the mentor? I heard that last week. A mentor actually has homework in that relationship. So that needs to be spelled out up front. At the end, I'm going to have, since I won't be able to capture while I'm writing everybody's thought here, if there'll be end of my slides, and you'll have a copy of the slides. There's an email there, and you can send me a note, and I'll send you a copy of that mentorship guide. So I'm sorry about that, but thanks for the interest, Lori. I appreciate that. I was just trying to figure out a way to get that to you, or maybe we can just send it to everybody. The second key area, so the first one is the partnership. The second one is the mentee drives the relationship. But too often I see people coming in and sitting down with their mentor and say, so what can you tell me? What challenges did you go through? But they're really not focused in on, like we just said, on that life plan. What area of life can you help me develop? So maybe it's professional. Maybe I want to communicate better. Sir or ma'am, how can I communicate better? How have you gone through and developed that? How do you see me communicating? What areas can I communicate better? How am I not capturing it? The mentee comes in with all kinds of questions with a mentor to help them in going toward that goal. I see a lot of people to send, so we'll just figure out how to do Eddie. We'll figure out how to send it to everybody. Hopefully it's on here. We can capture that. And then the last one, improve an area of the personal life. Now, you can't improve a personal or professional area all at the same time. Sometimes you got to pick one or pick two, work on those, get them going, and pick the third one, and pick the fourth one. So you got to be kind of timely because you only have so much time, so much priorities, right, that you can manage in your schedule. But knowing kind of what the priorities are and how I need to move forward, I think will pay off a lot. So everyone wants to be mentored by the leader of the organization. That can be great, but I think it can also be challenging. Why? The leader of the organization doesn't have that much time to be able to mentor everybody. So he needs to be choosy about who he can pick. And this other piece is, do they have the right expertise to help you in the area you want to grow in? You know, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe other people have it better. So I'm going to talk in a second about how you pick the right person. I think it's noble that people want to see it from the boss because they're the top of the organization. They may not be the best one for you. So let me ask you, have you ever entered into a formal mentor-mentee relationship? Formal, where you actually sat down and agreed what you're going for. Thanks, Eddie. There it is. Is the leader development toolkit the same as the mentoring guide? I don't know that it is.
No, I'm putting a couple of resources on the chat. That was just the first one I put in. Yep.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So Matt says yes. He's been in a formal relationship. That's awesome. I'm excited when you guys do that. I'm excited when you're doing the stuff I'm already talking about, because it tells me that maybe it's not as bad a situation as I think it might be. So what's the difference between a mentor, an advisor, and a coach? Different people have different opinions. As I went back to the dictionary, an advisor is a person who gives advice in a particular field. It's strictly that. You come to them, you ask a question, they give you advice. I had a lot of advisors in my life I could go and ask questions of. But again, that mentor is where you have a partnership and you're reaching towards certain goals. So it's a little bit different. A coach is somebody who's a partnership designed, so it's again a partnership, but it's designed through thought-provoking questions to raise the mentee or the individual's awareness, to give them insight and help them develop actions to reach their potential, to reach their goals. A little bit different. The mentee can tell them, mentor can tell them what they've done, and the mentee can listen, right, based upon where they want to go. But when the coach asks thought-provoking questions, it makes the mentee think inside of themselves and think about how they've done that, how they can improve, what areas they want to advance in, and create a plan. When you create your own plan, you're vested in its success. You're vested in making that happen. As the mentee, you may listen to what the mentor says, and you may not. I've seen a lot of people say, you know, I sat down with him, yeah, I learned a lot, but that's not me. But as the coach, they help you develop your plans, and now you moving forward. So there's advantages on each one of those. And let me know if there's any questions in the chat on those differences. I want to talk one thing about my Booz Allen experience. You know, when I retired from the Air Force, the culture in Booz Allen was a 360-degree assessment. And that's what really excited me about the organization. The writer would get feedback from the individual's superiors, peers, direct reports, a 360 view of how you're performing. They would write it up, and you would see at the end in the report, here's the things you're doing well, here's the things you're not doing well against the criteria, and here's a developmental plan. What I saw a lot of time, though, was they would put in the report, get a mentor. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. But what I saw, what I saw a lot of times, I'm sorry, I want to talk about that now. But on the mentor relationship was they would, let me step backwards. The development plan was to get a mentor. And then as I did their assessment the next year, I would ask them, so what did you learn? What kind of relationship did you have? What was your goals in the mentor relationship? And I was really frustrated because most of the time what I heard was, well, we went hunting, we went fishing, we went golfing. I said, okay, well, that's okay. Did you talk about things you wanted to improve in? They said, you know, we talked about things happening in the news, we talked about politics, we talked about sports. It was really more of a friendship, just getting to know somebody. I said, well, that's not really a mentor relationship. But I really got disappointed. So over time, I really started clearly thinking about the mentor-mentee relationship and that formal agreement. And I was excited when San Antonio came up with the guide, and they've been working on it for a number of years. It really helps develop that, and we'll get that out to everybody. Because I think before you ask someone to be a mentor, you need to clearly know what it is you want to attain, the life plan, and very clearly focus in on it. You know, my first couple of days at Booz Allen, the first morning I came in, I in-processed through HR, and I went to lunch with several leaders. There was a couple of principals and a vice president. I was a senior associate, and we sat down and they said, you know, we don't have a project for you right now, but tomorrow we start the assessment process. And I want you to sit in the back of the room and observe it because you're going to get to do this every quarter. We do 25% of the employees every quarter. Now, they don't do that now, but they did 12 years ago. So you're going to get to do this every quarter. So understand the process. So I did. I sat in the back of the room and I observed, and it was 2 minutes looking at the assessment that you'd already pre-read and talking about it for the previous year, and 3 minutes thinking about the developmental plan to make sure it was right. And that's where it was, hey, attend this course, get a mentor, etc. But they didn't really get real specific. But as they started talking about how to make those specifics, I started sitting in the back of the room and thinking for myself, this is day 2 for me at Booz Allen. How do I develop my development plan? What do I need to improve on? So I thought about in my 27-year Air Force career, what did I bring into this relationship? What am I bringing into the company that they can benefit from? I want to ask you in the chat, what kind of things do you think I was bringing in after 27 years in the Air Force? Anything? I was thinking my speaking, my writing, my leadership. I led squadrons of 200, 300, a group of 1,600. Yeah, lessons learned, new perspectives, relationships. Yeah, I was bringing in all kinds of experience. But let's flip that question around. What did I not have? What was I missing that I was gonna need to be successful in Booz Allen? That was the next question I asked myself. What do you think would be some answers? Private sector experience in what areas? It's true. My role was going to be business development. I was going to be managing teams. I was going to be growing business, internal politics. Yeah. So I started thinking to myself, and I wrote them down. I don't know how to do business development the Booz Allen way. I don't know how to write a proposal the Booz Allen way. I don't understand your proposal writing process with color team. I don't understand how you do financial management. I don't understand how you do, what's I have on my paper? Risk management. You talked about politics. What are the risk management? What are the relationships? Who approves what? I didn't know those kind of things. So I wrote them all down. I sat down with my boss my third morning before the next assessment day. And I laid this out and I said, here's what I think I need to focus on the next couple of months. What do you think? I'd like to get smart on these areas. I think this will help me be successful. And he agreed, and over the next couple of months, I started finding the key person who knew about those different things. And the key was some of those people were the same level as me. Some were at a lower level than me, lower pay. But you know, they were the expert in that area. So I wasn't going for the boss to figure out those things. I was going for the person who knew the aspect, writing proposals, financial management, risk management, all those different things. And I started to really learn. And I started to win all kinds of contracts as it started happening in my second year. So I became very successful. And I attribute that to thinking into what I needed to do. Every one of those, I sat down with a person and I said, hey, you seem to be really smart in this area. Would you mentor me over the next month or 2 months? Let's meet once a week or so. Let's talk about a different area. I think I've got some ideas. I appreciate yours. Let's see if you can help me be the best senior associate I can be. There's probably things that you're frustrated that my peers don't know. Would you help me? I'll help me identify those. I'll bring in some other things. And we're going to help develop me to the senior associate I need to be. So we actually created a formal relationship. And it became very productive. It was really beneficial. Here's the challenge, though. George Bernard Shaw says 2% of the people think, 3% of the people think they think, and 95% of the people would rather die than think. That's kind of insulting in some respects, but what's he really trying to say? He's saying that 95% of the time during the day, we don't really have to think. We're operating in our subconscious, our unconscious mind. Our routine when we wake up in the morning, we do the same thing out of habit. When we get in the car and we drive to work, we drive the same way. We get to work, we probably do the very first thing. We walk in, we hang up the coat, we turn on the computer, we open right into emails, right? We start checking in certain ways as we go through it. Everything is habit all the way through the day, even to what we do when we get home. We start watching TV, we start certain programs. You know, it's almost a big thing to drop a program and to start watching a new program because it's out of habit. We got to think about the new habit, a new channel we got to turn to. So what Shaw is saying is that we exist 94% of the time without really having to think. We just do the same thing. And even when we get a challenge at work, say we're a financial analyst, you know, we know spreadsheets and we know pivot tables. If they give us something, we may have to think a little bit about how we do that table or how we put different things in the table. But it's really kind of the same way, kind of the same thing. It's kind of easy. So 95 to 98% of the time, we're really not having to think to do our job. It's only those 2% of the time where we really have to stop and engage the conscious mind and really think about new thoughts or new ways to do things, new products and services. And a lot of times when we get to that point, people will back off because it's just so different, so unusual. So what we end up doing is we turn to other people for the answer. Sometimes from a mentoring piece, you know, we rely on our boss to do the development of us. Sometimes the boss relies on the company. Sometimes the company just throws out a few pieces, a few different classes, and thinks that they're really developing their people. In reality, they're not really focused in on the development. So we don't always think about what we need to be doing. So I challenge us. You know, if we really rely on our leadership for the company, is it any wonder that they don't talk financial management or relationships or spiritual? It's not their concern, but it is our concern. It is my concern. So we need to be doing is thinking about harmony. Now, harmony is the quality of forming and pleasing a consistent whole, coming together, all those different pieces in your life plan so that they're all working together. I want a life that's in harmony. I hope you do too. You know, if I only focus on the professional side, then what do? All my focus is on professional. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to get to work before anybody else. I'm going to work like a dog all day. I'm going to take every opportunity I can to prove my value. I'm going to stay late and show the boss how good I am. I'm going to miss my kids' sporting events and school events. I'm going to miss date nights with my spouse. I'm going to not be focused in on friends. I'm going to gain weight over time because all I'm doing is sitting at that desk or whatever and doing that work. And I will miss out on everything else, and that's not harmony. You know, I don't want to just watch what I eat from plate to mouth. I want to be thinking about it from how it impacts me, how it helps me, you know, with nutrients and protein and help me to get stronger and all those different things. So you may be doing well, but are you tracking things and are you moving in the right direction? This is kind of an interesting story. In 2004, on that project, when I was traveling every week, I joined the project with Department of Energy. We were working 14 to 16 hours a day. I had to be in Amarillo, Texas, or Oak Ridge, Tennessee every week. And like I said, it was long days, and I was eating late at night, like 8, 9 o'clock. And we're going to restaurants, so we're eating big meals at 9 o'clock. Bad thing, as they tell us. I found a few craft breweries, so I was trying some different beers. But I thought it was okay because I was doing the insanity workout every morning for 45 to 75 minutes. And I was sweating hard. But you know what? In 7 months, I gained 25 pounds. At the end of that, I was standing in front of my team one day in November, and I looked down, and my pants were just stretching, and my belt was on the last loop, and I said, holy cow, I got to buy new pants. I got to buy a new belt. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. That means I'm 40 inches around. I'm not going to do that. So I was talking to one young man, and he mentored me. He said, the MyFitnessPal app can help you track everything. And I said, I think I'm doing good. He goes, just try it. Within a month, everything was loose. Within 12 months, I had lost not only the 20 pounds, but 10 pounds more. Now I had to buy new pants because my wife looked at me and she said, your pants are really baggy, dude. You need to get some new pants. No, it was okay because now I achieved that goal, right? About feeling better about myself, about health, all because I was tracking what I was doing. And I was making sure if I was going to drink a beer, I didn't do something else. And I could go on and on about stories like that. But you see, I wasn't thinking those 7 months. I was just doing what I thought was right, what I'd always been doing, but I wasn't measuring it. So are you being deliberate with your fitness programs? Type in the chat. Are you being deliberate? Are you really thinking into what it is you're doing? Are you tracking calories and are you watching your weight? I think the same thing can happen in your relationships. All that time at work, working late nights, weekends, when you're not around, guess what? Your spouse looks for somebody to put some money in their emotional relationship bank. If it ain't you, it might be somebody else. And that can lead to the wrong decision in terms of your relationship. I've seen that happen way too much. And right around us, we've got 3 neighbors in our little cul-de-sac who are all getting divorced in the last couple of years just because of this is happening. The individual wandered away and the spouse went and found something different. And I'm not going to raise any judgment on it. It's just if they were focused in on themselves in the relationship, maybe that wouldn't have happened. So the whole time I was traveling for the Department of Energy job, I would come home Friday night and my wife and I would go out to dinner. We'd sit and we'd talk and we'd just have fun. And we spent the weekend doing chores or going bird watching or hiking, sometimes camping. We just do everything we could together the weekend. On a Sunday afternoon, when she put me back on the plane to go back to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, I'd always ask her the question, are we doing okay? And I would pause, because if we're not doing okay, I won't get on that plane. And she always said, yes, we're doing fine. So we kept focusing on that relationship and growing it. So the same question, are you being intentional on your relationships? Again, it's not a new thing that you haven't heard, but I want you to think about, are you doing it? Very important to care for self, exercise, and understanding body moves, exactly. You can talk the same thing with financial. I won't go into all the details, but if you're not thinking about the finance and how you're investing and how you're growing that money and what amount do you need, all of a sudden we'll just get to some point and say, I think I'm on the right track. I talk to a lot of people and say, I think I'm on the right track. I say, well, how much do you think you need? I say, well, I think I need, but when I ask them how they've calculated it, I haven't really thought about it. So in summary, I'm coming down to the end. What does this really mean? First, as you think about left of mentoring, I think you need that life plan, that personal life plan where you're thinking about all the different areas of your life, clear goals. What is it that I want to focus in on? How do I keep them in harmony? If I'm going to focus on my relationship with my kids, then I may have to sacrifice something on the professional side. If I focus in on being at the gym from 5 to 7 every morning, maybe I'm sacrificing something again from the professional side. I'm not going to be the first person in. How do I compensate for that? How do I still try to achieve a goal that I can get to? So I think that life plan and how you create harmony around it is so important. So and talk to your spouse, talk to your kids, make sure everybody's in agreement how you're going forward. For me to maintain my body, for the next 18 to 20 years, I've had to go through this pain of now 5 weeks of the knee replacement. But I can see that goal, long range of being on the Frisbee golf course with my grandkids in a couple of years. And that drives me just to continue to work through that. And analyze your life plan status. Talk to your spouse, talk to your friends, talk to your coworkers, talk to your boss. How are you achieving? Are you moving in the right direction? You may be working 12 to 18 hours a day, and you may not be doing the right things at work. So have that conversation. Figure out how, we always think about the law of the rubber band. Progress stops when the tension in the rubber band between where you are and where you want to be goes away. So how are you keeping that tension? How are you focusing on where you're at and where you need to be, where you want to be? Are you moving in the right direction? So have those conversations. Are you achieving the right goals? Third, only after both of those are done, then think about the possible mentors. Who else knows something in the area that I want to grow? Don't ask for physical fitness advice from the guy who's 60 pounds overweight. Don't ask for life balance questions from the guy who just got divorced, who's been working 16 hours a day. Don't ask priority management from the guy who's working 12 to 14 hours a day and is always late on his expenses. But you know what? I've seen a lot of people do that. And just because the guy was the boss, I reached out to him to talk about it, but he wasn't the right example. So think into and have a conversation with the people that you're thinking about being a mentor for. Have a meeting with them, talk to them, understand where they're at, understand if they have the right capability, and then enter into a formal relationship. Formal can be verbal, but it's, hey, this is where I'm trying to go. Will you help me get there? I want to do this over the next 6 months. Say maybe meet once a month or once every 2 weeks, whatever we can work out. I want to talk about these kind of things. Would you help me get to this goal? And if they commit to it, then you've got a formal agreement. You're now working in that partnership and you're working together. But again, it's key that you as the mentee drive the relationship. And then, as somebody said earlier, have to revise that life plan. Keep thinking about where you're at. I encourage you to create a little picture like this, something that motivates you. This is my life, my growth plan, my life plan. It's about the grandkids in the middle top. It's about the family in the upper right. That's my 60th birthday at the New Belgium Brewery up in Fort Collins, Colorado. We all got together for a weekend to celebrate my birthday. My son and I in the lower right got to Lambeau Field for the first time. I'm a big Packer fan, and we got to enjoy the weekend together, just he and I. And unfortunately, he was going through a divorce, but it was time that he and I could spend together and really talk and chat. The travel on the lower left, the birding on the upper left. It's those things, and you notice they all surround my work life. I love to speak and train. I love doing exactly what we're talking here. So helping people think into things. But if I don't have all the rest of them, the work thing doesn't work. They all got to work in together. So I challenge you to think into that, because, you can choose to change or you can choose to stay the same. But either way, you're choosing. Too often we think about, if I don't choose it, then I'm just continuing on the way I am. But yeah, you are. You're making a choice to stay where you're at. And if you're overworking, getting weight, not progressing at work, make a decision to get that mentor, to get the right mentor, to have your life plan and advance forward. Because you know what? Last slide, most people don't lead their lives. They accept their lives. I unfortunately don't have much time for questions because we spent some time on the technical stuff in the beginning. But what questions do you have? Working very hard, but probably need to assess the bigger picture and develop SMART goals. Yeah, SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Time-bound. Very good. What questions do you have? Put them in the chat or come off and mute. We've got about 5 more minutes left. Hope this was valuable. Hope this got you to think about mentoring in a little bit different way. Not just seeing who can mentor you, but who's the right person to mentor you in a specific focused area. Give it another minute for questions, or we'll turn it back over to Zachary or Eddie.
I think Zach had to sign off, but I think what I'm hearing from your message is that we need to be purposeful about certain trajectories in our lives. That some things happen by happenstance and we take advantage of it, but other things we gotta we got to put effort in instead of goal and to work towards it. So I appreciate hearing that with the different things I want to do professionally. You know?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Don.
Hey, Eddie, this is Frances Hinckley. Don, this is a great presentation. Really enjoyed the way you've presented your experiences. My question is, I always struggle with getting things down on paper, and I know that that's the important part. You know, Susie mentioned the SMART goals, and I think that we're all familiar with SMART goals and what they can do to help you. But what would be your advice? I mean, is it just like biting the bullet, sitting down, carving out time every week, month, quarter to look at the goals and get some things down on paper? How did you approach that?
I think I did it from several different perspectives. That's a good question. One, I did sit down and try to do it myself. And you're right, at some point you get a block and you stop. So then I tried to sit down with some of my peers and ask them the question. So how are you doing that? How are you developing goals? What kind of goals? This is where I'm at. Can we share and talk about it? Then I actually went to my boss or found a mentor who seemed to be able to do that. We sat and talked about it. In that professional development group I talked about, how do we develop SMART goals? That was back as a captain. So we were able to try different ways to continue to advance them. But too often, that ego, we don't want to share that we're having problems with that. But when you start sharing it, you realize everybody's kind of in that situation. So being vulnerable, being open, I think with different people you know, to do that. Does that help a little bit? I don't know that there's really a tool except just sitting down and thinking, 7 questions, why? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to lose weight? I want to look better. Why do I want to look better? Well, I want to feel better. Why do I want to feel better? So that I can play with my grandkids. I want to develop that relationship. Why do I want to develop that relationship? Because I don't think my dad and my mom really had a good relationship with their grandkids. And I don't want to be that way. So why do it be better? Those kids to really know what it's like to have a relationship with their grandparents, and they carry that forward. And my wife actually has a great relationship. That's what I want to have when my grandkids grow up. So by asking those questions, I kept thinking into where do we get to.
That's very helpful. I think that I can speak for a lot of us on the LDP group, myself probably being the top of the list. That being vulnerable part is very hard. You know, we're all go-getters. We're all you know, wanting to be successful and move up the chain in our respective companies. And showing that vulnerability to your boss is not always at the top of the list. So that's very good advice, I think, is to actually.
Yeah, but you know what? Yeah, they probably did or currently are struggling with the same thing. You'd be surprised. Every CEO is struggling with that same thing, and you think that they would have it because they're the boss of the organization. So that's why groups like Vistage for CEOs, C-suite leaders, they pay $500 to $1,000 a month to sit in a room with people at their same level and talk about these exact same things. And they're not being vulnerable to their organization, but they're being vulnerable with other CEOs. They're advancing themselves and thinking into situations, not only what's coming for the company, but how to manage better, how to build a business plan, how to market better.
Thank you.
There's been a big, yeah. And that's what I'm doing with the military, using the mastermind concept, 8 to 10 military going through transition together, going for a common cause. We're just vulnerable with each other. We're helping people in amazing ways. And it's really producing. So I tell you what, if Eddie can help me with capturing the chat, I will find a way to answer every one of these questions because I think we're out of time. And I will get them back to Eddie and he could send them out. Is that all right, Eddie?
Yes, the chat will be an output of the webinar. So I'll get that. We'll post the slides, the chat, and the recording on the LDCOI page for anybody that wants to go back and dive into the topic a little more.
Okay. So if you can get that to me, I'll answer them and you can post them.
No problem.
I like the one, going any path will get you there. I love that. There's an Alice in Wonderland quote that I use all the time. I thought was great. It came up in Army War College.
Yeah, that's the Cheshire Cat saying, yeah. I like that.
Have you seen other posts implement mentor programs? San Antonio, for every scholarship we give to a college student, we offer up a mentor from the fellows group. And then now that we've just created, now for 10 years, we've done the leadership program. The last 3 years, we went out to the population and said, who else would like to mentor folks going through the leader program? And this last year, we got really good at it, and everybody had a mentor. And I've seen some fantastic results already. Promotions, taking on great projects, doing really neat things. So we're being very intentional on creating a mentor program in San Antonio. And now not just the scholarship winners in the leadership lab can have a mentor, but anybody can have a mentor if they want one. So we're building groups on both sides. And we've got a whole area, one of the leadership and mentoring vice president of the board that focuses in on that. I can't speak to other ones, but I know that's what we're doing here. I think I'll stop there, Eddie, unless we still have more time. I know we're over time.
Yeah, I think I've seen folks drop off, so I want to just keep to the time we had advertised for in case people move on. Thanks for that main discussion. There were a lot of great comments in the chat for it definitely struck some good interests with the attendees. So thanks, Don, for pulling this together. And Don, you can tell loves doing this. So if you want any guest speakers at your post meetings, or we also advertise Don in our toolkit as a subject matter expert in this area. So feel free to reach out, and he does this for a living, so he's good at it. So thanks, Don, for taking care of us. And we will see everybody next month at the next LDCOI call. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.